The silky fabric beneath Yeonju's fingers promised comfort, but the sheerness did not. Emmy chose the attire by his mistaken request. Clarification that her choices ought not be lingerie-esque should have been needless. The ad called for someone to sit for a painting, not to audition for an AV role. Emmy. Exasperation carried his words, his sister's name weighted like profanity. 24 years under her rule conditioned quiet agitation. If he let it explode, she'd materialize like smoke to administer corporal punishment, not with malicious intent to harm, but to remind Yeonju to curb the attitude. Thick drops escaped Yeonju's vibrant tresses to splatter on the clothing laid out below. Horror contorted his face as the sheer material became translucent in an instant. The forecast threatened to turn white clouds to black within hours. But still, Yeonju willed the rain to hold off until tomorrow. Caught in a downpour wearing tissue paper did not rank top of his bucket list. An absent finger scratched the inch of scarred skin at Yeonju's temple, and he let out a shaky breath. A month prior, Yeonju sent a spontaneous submission to model for the exceptional Choi Seong. What if he picks me? The thought alone felt nonsensical. But then came the news through a congratulatory phone call, delivered by the artist himself. Dread-filled excitement tormented his stomach when he hung up moments later. The man held notoriety for his love of seclusion, but also for his horrendous bedside manner. Interviewers clamored to meet Seong, but popularity only highlighted his social ineptitude. Yeonju measured another insubstantial shirt against his body. The mirror reflected a worried palm flat against his abdomen and anxiety in his gaze. Half a year of inactivity and fatty snacks failed to affix, but he craved more time to redefine the area. He would have for sure had knowledge of the job, and Emmy's penchant for risque outfits come sooner. Yeonju tossed the hanger to the floor and folded the shirt in his bag atop his preferred outfits. Next time, he'd do his own shopping. If the week-long trial proved fruitful, they'd discuss a more long-term arrangement. The promise of immediate job security would have calmed Yeonju's nerves, although he appreciated the opportunity to embrace a non-committal approach. Yeonju shut away the worrisome garments in his bag and dropped into a nearby chair. Excitement or anxiety caused deprived sleep the prior night. A tentative prod at swollen undereyes produced a disheartened frown. Perchance Seong would find some odd appeal to the slight puffiness there. A glance at the clock above his bed, echoed in the mirror, urged Yeonju to pick up the pace. To flirt further with tardiness would jeopardize his good first impression. Without time to break out the blow dryer, he squeezed his tresses with a damp, discarded shower towel. In all probability, the heat would only exacerbate frizz into a chaotic mess anyway. A rearward beep interrupted the dilemma of whether to leave his hair loose or struggle with an updo. Yeonju's heart jumped at the sight of his new employer's name across the screen. His fingers relayed the given address into his driving app. Hopeful his hair would dry by the time he reached his destination, Yeonju piled it into a messy top bun. With a final once-over, he retrieved his bag and phone from the bed and bolted for the door. Yeonju's speed slowed to a stop midway up the massive staircase. He wiped sweat with his sleeve and self-imprecations rushed his mind. Stupidity led him to favor workplace casual over comfort. A wry smirk found Yeonju's lips as his mind revisited Emma's ensembles. Both would guarantee him undesirable stares, but he would be much cooler. He peeled his white shirt from his skin again and implored Seong's cabin to appear soon. A meetup at the artist's home would merit major brownie points, so he agreed right away. Seong despised public appearances. Even jittery fan exchanges, only a hair more tolerable. Yeonju understood the desire for a house in the mountains, one that required a trek to reach it. But Yeonju hadn't considered how this hike might take a toll on him. As he progressed, Yeonju's thoughts danced around that quaint cafe at the base of the steps. Absent his current sheen and unpleasant odor, he'd sip an icy beverage. A sweet smile on his lips, scrumptious treat on his plate. The journey to the cabin would be inevitable, but the air-conditioned shop would maintain his freshness. More ideal for their first official face-to-face. Leaves rustled in his ears, and Yeonju smiled in anticipation of an imminent breeze. Welcome coolness caressed flushed skin. Sight of the cabin drew a sigh of comfort. As the building came into clearer focus, so did the man cross-legged on its front porch. Yongju swallowed hard, hazel eyes fixed wide. Chue Saung. A small table sat before him, and steam wafted off the cup held to his lips. The mountain elevation removed some humidity, but how much comfort could hot tea give on such a muggy day? At the summit, Yongju pulled a shaky breath. He secured his clammy grip and approached the porch. The furrow in Saung's brow tightened the knots in Yongju's stomach. He bowed deep and long, a warm salutation and apology for his unpunctuality. Should we have picked a later time? Another date. Saung's resonance shot jolts up Yongju's spine and he almost dropped his phone. No. The word came out too brusque. 1, 2, 3. He counted to himself, shook his head, and repeated the word with less fervor. No. With less confidence too. Well done, Yongju. Saung's face read disappointment as he snatched up his lonely cup and the table it sat upon. Come, he said, and went through the cabin's open door. Yongju stood frozen at the base of the stairs. Like a trespasser in the king's quarters or mud-caked boots in a temple, to follow him felt wrong, even with express permission. Busy in contemplation, Yongju failed to notice the broody man come to tower over him again. His sky-blue kimono contrasted his countenance and body language in a laughable way. And the soft pink flowers, the cherry on a questionable cake. Had Saung chosen this to welcome Yongju here? An attempt to distract from his disgruntled guise and dismissive stare. We don't have all day. Yongju threw back a second acrid cup before displeasure found root to his face. He almost never drank tea, but Saung's scrutiny made him feel refusal would be discourteous. Outside a nearby window, birds settled their broods. Inside, porcelain clinked. Somehow the silence screamed the loudest. Yongju's expectations for this job were nil, the experience brand new. Yongju's visage appeared throughout countless magazine spreads, but paint had never immortalized him on canvas before. Saung excelled at scenic still life, but only released a few portraits, one of which sat in a place of honor above Yongju's work desk, gifted to him in the infancy of Saung's career. Worth millions now if the interest arose to sell it. When Yongju discovered Saung wanted models, it took him by surprise. But he could not forego the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Whether his acceptance stemmed from intrigue or residuals of a boyhood crush, who could say? On a plush floor pillow, Yongju gulped another gracious spot of tea. Very bitter. A strand of hair escaped the pile atop his head, and he twirled it with his finger. So dry. He gave his head a shake to dissuade another piece that tickled his nape. Let it down. Saung's curt voice meshed demand with suggestion, his cold tone a result of years in solitude. Yongju raised an eyebrow. Your hair. Yongju lifted his hand to tug away a dark, satin ribbon to release a mane of wild ginger hair down one shoulder. I planned to get it cut before I came, but... Saung leaned forward. The awkward chasm between them reduced to a mere crack. Is it natural? Yongju nodded. His eyes held an unexpected, unguarded warmth as Saung inclined towards Yongju for closer inspection. I'm a quarter Irish. Yongju tucked a tendril behind his ear. Is it a problem? Would you be here if I thought it was? Fearful his unique look might be off-putting, it took time to put together a portfolio. Yongju made sure to exclude outdoor photos, as sunlight only emphasized his genetics' natural brilliance. He selected images where his locks appeared muted. Nevertheless, the resonant tone persisted. As a child, this difference brought on ignorant torment, so he wore hats meant to stifle. As an adult, Yongju rather enjoyed the distinction he held. Saung broke the silence with an unexpected compliment. Beautiful. Yongju curbed a chuckle, under the assumption Saung's intrusive thoughts had escaped. But the artist's expression didn't falter in the slightest. Such a genuine commendation heated Yongju's cheeks. Compliments prevalent nowadays replaced the cruel taunts of his youth. Yeonju had grown used to how people would marvel at his unexpected background. Since childhood, the inability to blend into a crowd made him a constant spectacle. But Seong's praise in this moment set Yeonju's stomach aflutter. With a shy smile, he dipped his head in gratitude. "Thank you." Seong gave a single nod. A smile tweaked the corner of the older man's mouth. No, it couldn't have. A trick of the light. Yeonju couldn't recall if he'd ever seen Seong smile. Not even in the handful of interviews he'd done in the past. Earning Seong's intrigue, albeit a minuscule trace, did well to mitigate Yeonju's nerves. Seong released a sharp breath and winced as he stood. Despite Yeonju's curiosity, he opted not to pry. "Now, before the weather turns on us." Seong motioned towards the brown bag on the floor. "I assume you have what you need." Their previous phone call touched on what to wear. Not too flashy, not forgettable either. Seong offered to provide clothes for the shoot, but Yeonju turned him down. His eyes flitted to the leather bag he trudged here with. His stomach sunk in regard to the embarrassments folded inside. What if they don't fit? Should have tried them on first. "I'll give you some privacy, be quick." Seong strode past Yeonju without another word towards the next room. A floral, sweet yet smoky scent in his wake soothed Yeonju's nostrils. He wiped his clammy hands on his pants and pulled the sheer white robe from its leather confines. On Yeonju's body, the garment more resembled a curtain than a tire. It hurt to admit it, but the semi-transparent silk on his body proved his sister's magnificent taste. Slate blue swirls encouraged the eye to each center. Florate designs patterned the excess space. Not gaudy, but far from Yeonju's usual preference. The material clung to him with each experimental twist before the mirror. He'd never worn such luxury, and he prayed his stale skin wouldn't ruin it. The aimless robe hid nothing, which only strengthened the intimate apparel aura. While it did flatter him, he scrunched up his nose at the sight. Strategic metallic accents and pearlescent shimmers on the cuffs. The hemline kissed his feet. His body's hard curvature almost open to the elements. But the crude belt knot did quite well to hide his troublesome midsection. A tongueful of venom polished an upper incisor, and he sighed. Mental note, rebuke Emmy later. Yeonju moved the necklace against his collarbone and his hair over one shoulder. It wouldn't solve anything to stall. Too late now. If Seong's repulsion made itself known when he saw Yeonju again, at least he'd avoid a week of awkward eye contact. A thud and sharp click behind him jolted Yeonju's entire body. He whirled on the spot to see scrutinous eyes fixated on him. For years, Seong depicted nature's splendors. Grand rocks devoured by voracious waterfalls. Snow-capped trees. Endless iterations of blooms from various periods throughout the year. Apprehension had been palpable when he decided to switch to the human form. He could portray people well enough, but they were lifeless. To lose oneself in their eyes meant to drown in the ocean's depths. He strove to create works akin to gazing upon a love unconditional. Unable and without desire to look away due to the ignition of pure euphoria in one's veins. The greatest high no man-made pharmaceutical could ever match. To reach such a skill level requires practice. Practice meant human interaction. Seong sent out model correspondence on a whim, and to his utter shock people responded. Once upon a time he'd been in good standing. To learn his name lost all merit upon his retreat from society would be upsetting, but not surprising. For certain, most people had. The responses in his inbox affirmed the depth of his impact. For even a few to hold on to his memory renewed confidence. Seong rifled through many adequate portfolios. And he would have done a fine job, but none stood out in the way Yeonju had. In comparison, he lacked experience and exceeded the average age too. But his beauty, immeasurable. With Yeonju as his subject, Seong's first painting in years would be inescapable. Yeonju reminded Seong of all his favorite seasons. Dramatic green eyes and vibrant locks matched Autumn's pumpkin oranges and Ariadne maple reds. Soft lips pink like the floral rain showered on delighted passersby in spring. Skin disturbed only by light freckles, like pristine snow dotted with small footprints. The man's beauty eclipsed them all. Is this okay? Instinctively, Yeonju pulled the robe in vain over more of himself. The weight of Seung's camera against his back felt foreign. By now there would be frantic clicks until his memory card filled, but Seung stood frozen. He cleared his throat and swept his hair into a ponytail. Fine. He held back the unprofessional desire to speak out on the other man's stunning visage. Seung set up his easel and laid some brushes on the ledge. When he turned back, the atrocious way the other man had tied his sash caught his attention. May I? Yeonju put his hands to his sides in affirmation. Seung worked open and retied the knot. Sit, he said, and Yeonju did so without hesitation.